Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to spend some amazing time today with an amazing guest. I know I always say that they're amazing, and trust me, today is going to be epic, I believe. No pressure at all. So I'm Davey, and in front of me, cross table, I have Norbert. Hopefully people know Storybook, Norbert. And we're going to dive a little bit into the stories of that software engineers and how we end up in OSS development, like full-time, which is a luxury for a lot of people. They're dreaming of, but you're doing it.
Yes.
So we're going to discover the things that took you there and your motivation behind that. And I wanted to know more about your passion also outside of being a software engineer and your trajectory so far.
Yeah.
So welcome.
Thank you.
So can you tell us a little bit more about your journey? So if from what I've learned and I, after meeting you a few years ago, talking to you when we were prepped for these podcasts,
yeah,
you were a bio teacher in the past.
Well, I try to be.
You try to be.
Yeah.
And then now you're a software engineer at Chroma, but you've been working for more than 15 years as a professional software engineer.
Well, more and more professional over the years, I would say.
Okay.
I mean, I definitely didn't start out as a professional. Looking back at it now.
Okay.
But yeah, my name is Norbert de Langen.
Yeah.
I live here in the Netherlands, which is a fantastic country to live in, if I have to say so.
I agree with you.
Yeah. I live not in Amsterdam, which is pretty much what everyone asks me outside of the Netherlands. Do you live in Amsterdam? Well, the answer is no. I live in a small city called Zwolle. Also very nice.
Yeah.
Very much like no tourism, so I like that. Whenever I come to Amsterdam, it's like really nice because it's a cultural city, but it's kind of flooded with tourists, from my humble opinion.
But you work in Amsterdam for a few years, right?
Yeah,
you were
I did,
commuting every day or...
Yeah, I was indeed commuting for a long while for my professional career when I was consulting. But how about I start with how it all got started? I was when I was young, I didn't really know what I was gonna do in life. I didn't feel like I'm gonna be hacking on computers all day. I didn't really know. But one thing that I did know is that I kind of wanted to be like one of my teachers, and obviously they were a teacher. And so when it was time for me to kind of pick a profession for me to continue studying, I picked teachers or being a teacher. And then the profession that I wanted to teach was biology, because I had some sort of fascination with biology, because biology has found like solutions to problems, and it's kind of really interesting to know about all the potential solutions to a particular problem and how many different solutions there are. And that really sparked my interest in biology.
But then biology is also pretty vast. It's wide. You can literally...
It is super vast, yeah. And what ended up being, for me, the reason to not continue that career was at some point I had to do like field research.
Okay.
And
like you were at university or
Well, I think it's not an actual university level that I was at.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure of the English word for it.
Okay.
But the field research, it was too boring. I couldn't deal with it. And then writing an entire report on your field, it was, it really set me off.
The theoretical part was not really your thing in a way.
No. The act of doing biology in the field really deterred me from becoming a biology teacher.
Okay.
Really, you're just performing work and counting. I cannot stress enough that to my experience, being a biologist is a lot about counting animals and plants and biodiversity, and that part just wasn't of interest to me. maybe I should just have tried another section of biology because, as you say, it's super vast.
Yeah.
But when I was studying to become it, something I had done in my past to kind of, as a hobby, kind of made something out of...
You're describing the transition from being a bio researcher to go to software engineering.
So when I was young, what I would do was open up Flash.
Okay.
And then
the
draw.
fantastic Flash.
Yes, indeed. That was actually my first programming environment.
Okay. That was an amazing place to be in a way back then. Yeah,
it gave you like lots of freedom. You could draw any vector you want. You could animate any point that you wanted, and so that's really what I was doing when I was young.
Okay.
And that kind of evolved slowly over time to me making like Flash animations that were kind of interactive and that would kind of morph into light games, like click and point and click adventures is what I was doing. And so that kind of introduced me to ActionScript.
Okay. Because ActionScript was the main programming language.
Which, as most JavaScript engineers will know, is actually a second derivative of ECMAScript.
Yeah.
And so later in life, when I was studying biology, that kind of that background and my roommate at the time, that kind of connected somehow.
Okay.
He was having his own little business, just servicing websites for small clients in the area. And some days he needed like a cool Flash intro because that was cool back then.
Yeah.
Or he needed some Flash animation for the menu or something. And he would come to me and that would actually pay my rent.
Oh, wow. Nice. So you were doing bio researches and then you had that side gig that will pay your rent.
Yeah. Yeah, and also competitive Halo playing a lot.
Okay.
I mean, that's kind of the thing that I like to do back then. And at some point, I was talking to my roommate, smoking weed in the garden.
Yeah.
Because that's legal in the Netherlands.
It is legal in the Netherlands. People watching from outside, it is legal in the Netherlands indeed.
We were in the garden, and I was kind of complaining about like the road I was on, really. And he told me, like, I cannot give you a job. I cannot do that. I'm a one-man show, and I just don't have the clientele to be paying you a salary. But I might know a company who would.
Oh, wow.
So he deferred me to my first employer.
Oh, wow.
And they asked me, like, do you know HTML? Do you know CSS? Because that's what we use here.
Okay.
I was like, not really? But I think I can learn. I mean,
I do Flash, so you know.
And it turns out like HTML and CSS, if you know and been working with Flash for a while, I mean, there are some parallels there.
Yeah.
And I really didn't write any JavaScript for a few years. I was really writing a lot of HTML and CSS. Later, quite a bit of PHP because there was a custom PHP CMS in there.
Which year was that again?
Oh, wow.
2000 something, 7, 8?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
2003, 4, 6.
Oh, okay.
Like that region, I would say. And so at some point, I was the only tech person in this small company. First, the owner was doing like the HTML work in Dreamweaver, and then I came in and was kind of first using Dreamweaver as well.
That's when everyone knows that you've been doing it for a long time. When you mentioned Dreamweaver and HTML.
Yeah. Moved over to Notepad++ at some point.
Which was fantastic, but yeah.
Yep. Using just regular FTP to put things into production.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty wild back then.
It was.
But like learning every day, mainly CSS, because the only way to learn CSS is with trial and error, I think.
Yeah.
And so I learned the hard way of using CSS and its limitations. And so oftentimes a designer would come to me, because there were quite a few designers in this company, and they would ask me like, can you build this? And it was like really challenging because, well, you don't use tables, right?
No.
Um,
Yeah. So the same thing. Don't use tables. Yeah, but that was pretty common. Back then.
And I would say, like, after doing that for about 2 years, maybe 3 years even, that's the point where I learned jQuery, and I started adding widgets and cool little interactive bits to the websites that I was creating. Because Flash at some point, I think 2006 when the iPhone came out, or the original iPhone at least, Flash kind of was on the downhill trend.
Indeed.
And so at some point in this company, I was alone, the only tech guy, and I thought I was done learning. Obviously I wasn't, and I kind of realized that I wasn't, but no one was around to teach me.
Yeah.
Everything I had taught at that point, or I taught myself at that point, I learned by reading things and trying things and reading things on the internet.
You were more books or online stuff?
Really, a lot of online tutorials.
Okay.
At some point, YouTube came out, and that was actually a good place also to view people writing code and how they would have their IDE set up and stuff, because like there was no one for me to teach how to configure my IDE. So
which IDE were you using then at that?
Well, still Notepad++. Yeah. And at some point, I knew like I had to leave. I don't really like the quote, but it kind of goes like, if you're the smartest guy in the room, find a new room.
Yeah.
I like being smart is just a gradient and specialization area, right? I don't really want to say that one person is smarter than another. It's just
at some point you just realize that
there's just not much. There's no one here that can teach me about the things that I'm interested in, and so
or that can even challenge you, or that can even challenge you on your learnings, and
exactly. So at some point, the 5th billion recruiter reached out to me, and I said, "Hey, I'm actually looking for a job right now."
Oh, wow. Okay. A recruiter.
Yep. And they helped me find a new job.
Nice.
And I was at a project company. And to this day, I still think like that was a really good step to go to a company that still builds websites, but not as with individual people, but as a small group. And so this really taught me to work with a small team.
Yeah.
I would say like a team between 3 and 8 or so was the average, and that was great, a good experience. There usually would be at least one other front end
next to you,
engineer with me, and so we could really build together and discuss whether solution A or B would be better. Whereas if you're alone, you have to either try both or just go with one.
Yeah, indeed.
And it's harder to learn that way.
Yeah, and then from there you have you basically learn how to work as a team. And where does that? Because there's something about you when we were talking, we were preparing for these podcasts. You mentioned some passions you have outside of computers, outside of coding, but all of them all goes around problem solving. Because then you are alone, you had to fix a lot of stuff. Even when you were doing researches, still it's trying to solve a problem. Then you end up joining a team. Mm-hmm. And how does that apply? Where that problem solving things comes from?
I just love when in my brain you understand the problem.
Yeah.
And then you also understand the solution to the problem. And it feels like two puzzle pieces are just clicking in place, right? I love that feeling. It just gives me a dopamine rush, whether I propose the solution myself or whether I just find the solution is already out there. I get the same good feeling, like, wow, we solved the problem. That's amazing.
So would you describe yourself more like you will go, if you were to choose, you have a product and technology. I'm talking about two sides of most of projects, you're going to have the shiniest and most beautiful technology you can apply, or a problem, which means the product you need to deliver. On which side are you based on your experience so far in terms of, you see my question?
Yeah.
It's mostly saying, are you more like a tech person that will say, give me the shiniest or the most amazing technology and I don't care about the product, I will deliver that product at the end. But then, or you mostly on the side of, let's just have that product working.
So I have the utmost respect for people who actually do migrations, meaning I think first and foremost, you're going to be out of a job if you don't provide a solution to someone who has the money to pay you. And so if you're like not in need of any money, then you can just work on the technical stuff all day long and no one will mind. And that can work. But if you're in a company, you should be product first. And
product
focused.
first, okay.
And then
that is an interesting take here.
And what you don't want is to only do that, obviously, because that kind of leads into this 3 to 4 year repeat cycle of building, it being so convoluted and complex that no one dares to touch it, and someone spawns a new project that kind of does the same. And you keep repeating that process and building the same features, which is also really bad. And so I have the utmost respect for people who pull it off to slowly migrate to a vision that they have for long term, such as introducing React to an existing code base or switching to a better CSS framework or something like that. And trying to do a complete rewrite. I mean, it can work.
But would you go for a complete rewrite even if the product is making money? Or
I mean, that would be a strategy that you like have to be aware of the risks.
Okay.
And you should not take that decision as a single engineer in a larger company.
Okay.
I think you should take that decision with your entire team, stating we're gonna, for example, it's like one of the options. We're gonna freeze our current product. We're gonna freeze its features. We're not going to implement any new features in there, and so the resources or human beings that are like released by that decision, you can focus and spend the resources on building this new application.
I like the way you mentioned resources between quote, like they're humans. I mean, so stop calling them resources, although that's the way the jargon
I don't really have an opinion on the matter.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's not offensive if someone calls 10,000 people resources, because that's the level that certain managers are operating on. They cannot call everyone by name. That's 1,000 people. It's impossible. But as like if you've got a Scrum Master and they're calling you, he's calling your team resources. I mean, that's the wrong level, I would say.
Okay. So let me go back to this problem solving thing and your career. I just want to see how the evolution of your career is really tied to that problem solving. And so you mentioned you were working for like a company that was building website as a team. Then at some point you move on to work at one very well-known company in Amsterdam. We're not gonna give names, or maybe. And am I skipping something there, or is it still? Well, what was the drive? What was the journey there? And problem solving, the equation with problem solving, and you growing as a software engineer? How do you put all those things together? So
at the second company I worked for, we did like projects of a year or so. And so we would be building with a team of about around eight. We would be building a single website, usually on a particular CMS, like large enterprise CMS. And then I would, maybe with one other front ender, be responsible for the front end. Oftentimes we did do some prototyping on the design, and then it had to be implemented and matched with the server-side templating languages, and et cetera. And that would really be the moment that me and a backend developer would really collaborate on that together. Obviously, they had like data models, and I would have like templates, and we would kind of be mashing those together.
Yeah.
And so this really led me to think about all these little bits and widgets that essentially their CMS is about. A CMS is often about, can I have this block of data and then this block of data below it and then this other block of data below it.
Widget kind of.
With a particular visualization.
Okay.
And so I was really thinking about components back then.
Yeah. And you were using jQuery already, which had a kind of plugins to do componentization of.
Yeah, but I was really constrained to the fact that we were using a CMS that was expecting everything to be server-side rendered. Yeah. And Node did not exist back then.
Yeah.
Or at least I was not aware of it. Node goes back way before from when I heard about it at first.
Yeah.
But some tools started to come up, like Grunt and later Gulp.
Yeah.
And so these things kind of allowed me to at least have my CSS and JavaScript nicely bundled and have some sort of tool set for me to ensure even like
start thinking component and
right, and that even at some point there was require.js, which I used, and that allowed me to write modules. And like I said in the beginning, like at first I didn't really feel like a professional at all. And at level by level or step by step, we introduced like build tools and better naming conventions. Like I was a pretty active user of BEM at the time.
Okay.
And then with require.js, I was using modules, and things were going up. And meanwhile, most of my colleagues were computer science degree holders. And they would know a lot about like C# and Java, and I didn't really know any of that. I kind of self-taught HTML and CSS, as I said, and so this computer science background I didn't know too much about, but their expertise was really something that I like gulped up as a front-end developer. I loved learning about their issues and their problems and their build tools. And I saw, for example, the second company I worked for was really Microsoft focused. Okay. And I saw a lot of the tools that Microsoft had built at the time for developers. It was actually pretty good. Like Visual Studio.
Visual Studio is still, amazing. It's an amazing thing.
Yeah, it's not what I, as a front-end engineer, needed. But I could see like they were able to refactor all the C# code, and it was
in a few clicks, like with really ReSharper, cool. Like click,
exactly.
click. Yeah, everything was going really fast. Yeah.
And so that's something that I took with me. Like, hey, that's cool. That's what I want as well. And I later found a lot of those tools actually in VS Code. So
later on, the tooling part, which means solving problems for developers and making their workflow faster.
And one thing that I started doing in this company was actually starting to teach those backend developers or developers that were kind of doing the backend, but mostly the front end of the backend.
Yeah, the front end of the backend.
Right. That's true. Like you've got data manipulation, and you've got rendering, and then you've got client side. And what people call front end is really different.
Indeed.
Some people call like the middle part front end, and then don't do the part in the browser at all. And some people say, well, everything that's happening on the server is backend. I'm kind of the idea that anything that touches or renders HTML, that's front end to me.
Front end, yeah.
And so this really sparked the whole idea of a full stack developer for me. For me, if a full stack developer doesn't necessarily have to do like SQL databases, etc.
Especially today, you have tools that can just abstract away this entire part.
Yeah, exactly.
And and then that's I see the transition there. Components are coming. all the tools, bundles and stuff like that. And then you have these, you start seeing the tooling part of things where you wanted to dive and start helping developers to make. And then that's where I'm like, where is the OS? So open source world came in.
Yeah. So the last project that I did at this second company, I introduced React.
Okay.
And it was still on a backend CMS using C# and .NET.
Okay.
And so where do we put React? Well, at first we only put it on the front end. And then at some point I tried to introduce React.js.NET in there to have React server-side rendered in their CMS. I think in the end that didn't really work out because of like memory issues or something. So that was a real shame, but we did get React on the front end, and so actual components. And for the first time, we, the front-end developers, were in control of where do we split these components up. And that was like huge.
Yeah.
And we were able to control the entire life cycle, and it was like absolutely fantastic to work that way. And I felt like that's the type of project that I want to work on. And I was kind of burned by the fact that I was not able to get React.js.NET to actually do like server-side render React and then rehydrate on the client to get the optimal render times, etc. I was kind of bummed out about that. Also, I was kind of lacking the enthusiasm about this technology from my colleagues.
For your colleagues, obviously.
And so that's the moment where I started thinking about, I think I need to move on.
Okay.
And so that led me to the third company that I worked for, which is a consultancy company. And I chose to actively chose this company for consulting because it would allow me to experience more problems.
Nice. You spent over 2 years there, I believe.
Yeah, just about over 2 years. Saw about 5 clients or so in that time. And so every client is very different, both in the problem that they have and are building a solution for their clients.
Yep.
The clients have different problems. The companies have different problems building the product to solve problems. And then, all of that is just super interesting to me because you see this, at first it feels like a mess of things that they're all building, and it's slowly you feel like, so this is why you're doing it. So this is why you're doing that. And so I guess that makes sense from a historical perspective. It doesn't really make sense if you were to build it from scratch. So what if you were to build it from scratch, and how do we get there? And that's really what I was trying to do whenever I was at a client consulting, like, where do we want to be and how do we get there? Problem solving, I was about to mention that. So and then I'm just trying to get that moment. Then you're like, there is this Storybook thing, and then from there, take me there. Okay, so the second client I was at consulting, they were using Storybook.
Okay,
and so they introduced it to me. I had never seen it before, maybe heard about it on Hacker News or something, but never really used it. They were already using it. I came in and they showed me the way it helped their company. And what I saw was junior developers joining the company would be able to be productive on their first day. And you have to imagine that this company is pretty old and big.
Okay.
And so they have a back end that takes an hour to spin up on your local machine. They have a front end that takes half an hour to start up on your local machine. You have to clone like 5 things in order to get
legacy.
Some parts were not really in the same version control system.
Yep.
Some parts you had to do a proxy to another machine, and some parts, God knows, you had to tunnel into another machine to legacy. But their front end, they were pretty new, and most of their new stuff was built in React.
Okay.
So whenever a new front-end developer came aboard, they just have them start their Storybook because that was really easy to get set up. And they gave them one component to work on and one particular bug. And then, whenever
like in a matter of hours, they were
exactly
up and running. Yeah.
And then over time, you fix more bugs on different components, and you can kind of get like a gloss over or a good idea of what is happening on the front end, like all of it, and how it composes together. And then you can, like, at some point, start the back end to do some work in there as well. Yeah.
And then you start contributing to Storybook at some point.
Well, the way that happened is this company had a lot of unit tests, and they wanted that flexibility.
That is a good thing in a way.
Definitely. Definitely. You should have unit tests. But they felt like using stories was slightly better. Stories for Storybook are quite like unit tests, except that the end result is visual and you can inspect it in your browser. You can like place in debugger statements and that stuff. And that's really what sold them to be adopting Storybook more versus adopting more unit tests. And so all these unit tests that they had, they kind of wanted to be in Storybook. And so I was working on an add-on partially on their time, but partially on my own time because I just liked the thing. That's at some point the person I was working with told me, "Hey, Norbert, I don't really think I'm going to be spending any more time on this because the original author of Storybook abandoned it. It's discontinued or."
Oh wow. Okay.
And I was like, as a consultant working for a client that was like really going to use Storybook more and more, like just shrugging that off and not doing anything with it would have been a huge disservice. And as an engineer, like had experienced developers coming in, they're given Storybook, a bug, and a component, and they can fix something.
I didn't know about that part when they literally was almost abandoned.
And so I had when I was consulting and before that, I had done some open source stuff. Like you find a bug and you go into Node modules and you edit the code in Node modules.
It works.
And it works. And you're like, oh, I guess I cannot save it. So I'm going to either have to fork this package and then
do my own thing, my own package.
Which I did for quite a few packages. But at some point, there's going to be updates and you really should contribute back, especially if you have the option to. And so, I started doing some documentation contributions, some code contributions here and there, but nothing serious, nothing big.
It doesn't have to be big.
It doesn't have to be.
Thing.
No.
You got to start somewhere, and then as you go, you grow, you become more confident.
Yeah, exactly.
And from there, you can literally go after such a thing, such a big project.
So I was confident enough to, at some point, say, all right, I'll just post on GitHub stating that if Storybook's maintainers are looking for new maintainers, I'm willing to give it a shot.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I posted that on GitHub stating, I'm willing to be a new maintainer if you're looking for one. Thinking of what do I have to lose?
Yeah.
I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Someone tells you no? Well, I'm not afraid of hearing no. There's nothing bad in hearing no. But I went to bed because it was late in the evening. And the next morning, I was greeted with an email from GitHub stating that I was the new administrator on the Storybook repo.
Okay, not even a discussion in between. It's just like an email.
I think I talked via Slack to the original author, Arunoda, maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
But we didn't really have this moment of, so it's yours now, or this is how it works, this is how much I can help you. Or, and I don't blame anyone for that. It's just like maybe you're kind of done with the project, maybe you're kind of burned about it, or you don't like it anymore, that's fine. I mean, any open source maintainers, as long as you're not paying them, they have no responsibility to update and keep it functioning.
Okay.
If you want open source to be guaranteed, you have to be paying for it.
That's something I want to touch on at some point. Keep going. So basically, from there, you have you took over Storybook.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I try to. Like taking over feels like.
Yeah, but okay, you were hand.
It was sort of handed to me.
Yeah.
And I knew right from that morning that I kind of made a false promise. Like I would not be able to maintain that project alone. It was previously a team that was working on it. And as I've kind of laid out, I don't really like working alone. I don't think I'm at my peak performance when I work alone. I like here's option A, here's option B, and which would you choose? And maybe you can iterate on option A a bit, etc. And so I knew that I would neither have the time nor energy to keep it maintained forever. Or maybe even I would not be able to do that for a month alone. And I also knew, I think there's going to be pretty nasty code in that repo.
But then when you suggest to take that project, to maintain that project, you didn't even look at those things first. You were just you like that thing, and for my customer, I cannot let that thing die. Then later on, you realize, okay, that might be, I might have some weird stuff.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure whether I cloned the repo for the first time after or before I was given ownership.
Okay.
But I had definitely looked at the code before. 100% sure. So,
okay. The if for people listening right now or watching us, if you were to summarize Storybook,
okay,
what will it be? What will it be? That's my question.
I cannot do it in a single sentence, but so here goes. Storybook is a development tool for engineers and their team members. And it essentially allows you to render any component with any data. And this allows you to make better components, and be able to reach them without too much hassle. And this second part is really important for things like QA. You're trying to assure quality.
Yeah.
Well, how do you ensure quality? I've been at at a lot of companies where the product owner or the QA engineer had to do a lot of manual work in order to assure the quality was okay. And I mean a lot. Like setting up a database level of a lot of work just in order to see the one line of code change, because it's just buried deep in the app, and you have to reach a particular application state in order to see that change. Or even worse, it's a change in an animation, and so the animation only occurs when you just registered, and so you have to,
there are scenarios that are tricky to handle,
and there's many of those scenarios when your application reaches a certain size or complexity, right? And so this is really the problem that Storybook solves.
Okay.
It sets up how much reloading for you, and so in a way you don't have to complicate the process of running your full application. You can just still choose to do so, obviously.
So it's mostly used for front-end frameworks, I will say, but then you can also include things like the React Native and so what's literally the scope if you were to scope it in terms of the coverage of Storybook?
Could you elaborate on the question a little bit? So
I just said Storybook, it's literally front-end focus, and I'm trying to see the scope of covered by
UI focused, I would
UI,
say.
okay, UI focus.
Because as I said, what is considered front end is different by groups of people.
Yeah.
So someone who's been rendering Java templates for years and they call themselves backend developers.
Yeah.
I think with the proper tooling, Storybook could be rendering Java templates just fine.
So the UI part is really important there. Yeah. And what are the challenges you faced while working on Storybooks? First one, I will probably go first on the time spent on it.
Oh, yeah.
The financial part, if you can tackle those two parts. And then the third one will be technically speaking, because you had to integrate that with so many other frameworks. So how did it go? So we have 3 points. So the first one is the financial part. Who's paying for that, and who was paying for that in the past, and who's paying for that right now? And then how did you integrate that in all these frameworks?
So as you've introduced right in the beginning, I'm actually a full-time open source maintainer, and I get paid to maintain Storybook.
Okay.
And that's really a dream come true.
Yeah.
It is something that I did not envision would be happening to me like a year or 2 years ago.
Can you quickly take us through that journey that said you went from maintaining it part-time to full-time?
Yeah. So I had to travel from my hometown to Amsterdam pretty much every day. And I did that with public transport, which is awesome in the Netherlands, by the way.
Yeah. Shout out to the transportation system in the Netherlands. Yeah.
And so I had a lot of commute time. And the commute time to work, I usually used for like really making sure that I was prepared to go to work and maybe fix some of the things I had stuck in my mind from the previous day. Yeah. So I would arrive at my work station fresh and really ready for the stand-up and that stuff. But my journey home would be usually where I would like cool down, and I was kind of done with the business charade of like management and that kind of stuff. And so working on something that is still engineering, because my brain is still going like, what's the next problem?
Yeah.
But I don't really like the particular problems that we were solving right there. So Storybook was for me like great. They had tons of technical problems, tons of user-orientated support problems, and
people asking you for help on this, trying to integrate that with XYZ UI framework.
And it felt like any help that I was giving was super appreciated, and that motivates me a lot.
Indeed.
And so those commutes for about 1.5 years really meant that was when I was supporting and improving Storybook. And oftentimes when I get home to my wife, we have dinner and she watches a movie. I'm like, I could watch this movie, but it's pretty shitty. I could also grab my laptop and work in Storybook. Yeah. I mean, she won't mind. And usually she doesn't. Oftentimes the commute home kind of morphed into me working at home, usually until pretty late, because I'm a night owl.
So basically from there you get to work on this part-time, and then at what moment you get that offer saying, hey, you want to work full-time on this thing?
Yeah.
This way.
I mean, it's pretty, it doesn't happen a lot, right? So at some point I did open like an open collective for Storybook, so the companies who were interested in making it more viable were able to, using money, because money does matter in open source or to any person's life. Ask them what they need more of. It's probably like things like love and friendship, but also money. It's just needed to
get things moving. Yeah.
To get things moving. And so an open source project Does it need money? Well, the people that, I think I think the answer is just yes. And what we use the money from Open Collective for right now is just solely for promotional things and things that will support the active development. So we're currently, for example, paying now.sh for hosting the website and using it as a CI.
Okay.
And so
they're not providing these kind of services for free for open source project?
To a degree, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But I mean, Storybook is pretty big, and so
yeah, I understand that.
we would be taking too many of the resources, or be throttled to the degree that it is not productive for us.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the financial picture to a degree.
Yeah.
So about 9 months ago, a company called Chroma approached me, and they asked me, "Hey, so we have built a product that is built on top of Storybook, which means any of our users must be using Storybook."
Okay. Wow.
We kind of did that as a way of that will probably work for now, and maybe we can expand in the future. And then when they found some investors to help boost their company,
indeed,
their investors also told them, you should focus on Storybook more. You should support that open source project.
Yeah, it's your fuel. It's literally,
And so at that point, they were looking for someone to help them grow Storybook, both in technical ways of improving it, so more users would be inclined to use Storybook, but also to grow the community around it, because ultimately many projects they cannot really depend on a small set of people.
Yeah.
This is a big problem with many open source projects and really any software engineering problem or software engineering teams, is that the team is actually too small to support it long term. And this is something that I have been doing right from the moment that I was given ownership of Storybook. Is I don't want to do it alone. How can I grow this team of maintainers?
Yeah.
And the way I've been doing it till this day is whenever someone creates an issue on Storybook and I see it, and I cannot look at any story, by the way, all issues. But when I see it and I think it's interesting, I would try to get that person to make his first contributions to Storybook.
Okay, that's nice.
I would try to find
does that work?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. My experience, when you ask people personally, hey, I can help you. This is the issue that you're experiencing. How about we work together on solving it? I can help you understand the code base. I can help you understand how the organization works, etc.
Is it part of your role? Because on your resume or LinkedIn, it's written you're a developer advocate.
Yeah,
so it's kind of linked to that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I see my role in the Storybook community as the guy who removes the blocks for other people to contribute.
Okay.
I see that as my primary goal. And if I still have time left, I do maintenance work and resolve issues and get releases out.
Okay, cool.
But
so let me quickly I have a few more questions for you, because we don't have enough time. So let me quickly ask you about features. What are the features on Storybooks for you that are you're most proud of, for example? What will be that features, existing or a future one?
So the community of Storybook is by now pretty large that I cannot even really understand everything that's going on.
Oh, wow.
But I do know about a few things that are going on. One contributor in France is currently making an integration with Code Sandbox.
Oh, nice.
Which allows you to like make your stories live editable, and you can edit your component and it will just all work in your browser and then export to Code Sandbox. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, that is a big one.
That's a really development focused. And then we also have completely on the other spectrum, we have Docs mode coming up. And that really makes Storybook a really good tool for making style guides out of.
Yeah.
And then one thing that I'm currently working on is monoconfig. The way you currently configure Storybook is kind of a hassle, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm personally not even sold on the whole story API that we've got. Even as I said, I didn't really invent that. I didn't came up with that solution. But you also don't want to be like, well, we'll throw everything out and we'll just start fresh.
You got to think your user. There are millions of people using it in a way. So
exactly. And so we know we're a development tool, and development tools should be as stable as they can be.
Yeah.
And predictable. The thing that I'm working on is
nice. So
can help.
Then I have a few more questions. So you have. After meeting you a few times, I also realized that you have some soft skills. I will say people today, there is this debate like, don't call it soft skills. They are core skills, like be able to communicate with people, be able to guide people, teach people stuff. And then what does that, how do you compare soft skills versus core skills in your daily work?
I'd say they are both important.
Yeah.
Yeah. You learn faster and easier, and you collaborate, and so you collaborate better, and so you become more productive.
Okay.
When you have these let's work together skills, as I
is it something you had to work on at some point, or
hell
is
yeah.
it okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's something of fear, uncertainty, and doubt in yourself that you have to overcome. And this is something that at some point in my life I said, I don't think everyone is out to get me. I think most people are here
to help.
They're fearing the exact same thing.
Okay.
And particularly that I know this moment happened to me at a conference. And that was my first time speaking at a conference. And it really felt like, it's hard to put into words. I think everyone here is here for the same reason.
They want to learn, they want to...
Exactly. Yeah. Everyone here wants to learn and wants to meet. And so you don't really have to fear going ahead and talking to strangers.
Yeah.
That's what they're here for.
Okay.
And so this is, to me, what open source is like too. Like you post something on GitHub, that's probably not to complain, but it's like...
To engage. Yeah, cool.
And so I engage.
Cool, nice. I like that. So we already answered the question product-oriented versus tech-oriented. I like that one because I'm going to be building a set of like a small documentaries about the way a lot of all my guesses see that point, that question. So can you throughout your career you met a lot of people, a lot of engineers. Is there someone in particular that inspired you, that impressed you, and you will want to work with that person again and again forever? Is there does that person exist?
I think that the team at Chroma right now is where I want to be.
Oh, okay.
And I want to keep working with those folks for a long, long time.
Okay. So is there someone in particular, if you were to advise me to talk to someone that can inspire other people, who will be that person? That's a difficult one.
Yeah. So you're asking me like which guest you get? I will say that's Norbert that recommended you, and sure.
I want to know why. I'm gonna ask that person why you had recommended him or her.
Sarah
Sarah.
Vieri. Not quite sure.
Sarah, yeah, Sarah Vieri. Okay. You met her, you know her,
she's amazing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. I think I have a handle on how I can get. I'm coming your way, Sarah. I'm just talking to the camera right there. That Sarah, I'm coming your way. Okay, that is super nice. Is there something you want to add? Is there something about your daily challenges that you want people to know about being an open source developer full time? You're working remote from home all the time?
I work from home.
Yeah.
Which is a challenge by itself.
Yeah.
It's like one of these pros and cons thing. I love it because it gives me a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
But you need to be the type of person that can kind of say, all right, and enough is enough, and now is the time where you spend actual time with family.
Yeah.
And you also have to be the type of person that will not just do only that and actually gets to work. And it's something that I'm learning still day to day.
Yeah.
Be focused and productive in your own home, but also get away from your computer and spend time with your daughter.
Nice. How many kids do you have?
One.
How old she is?
5 years.
Wow. Okay. Congrats.
Thank you.
So this is it. We have it. Thanks, Norbert, for coming. We have, I think, one of the main message I take from this talk to me, it's like you went from, you didn't really have a plan taking you to where you are today. You kind of went through the flow, and everything was just solving a problem, one problem at a time. And as you realize that, okay, you have some roadblocks, you just move on to something, or just to work around that and then move on to your next challenge. And hopefully I get to talk to you again a few years from now, and I'm so eager to see where your journey is taking you. So thanks again for coming, and that's it for today.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, cool, man.
See you soon.
Yeah.